There you go.
All right, here we go. Dynasty Evaluation Show, mid-afternoon delight edition for these guys. Me and JT are used to the afternoon shows. We got a new guy on here who's been on the day show before, actually, Jack Lucenay. Jack, where you been, man?
I've been ripping my hair out trying to make Thanksgiving dinner in Canada, but also I just dropped an episode of the Worst Fantasy Show. We're focused on the fantasy football this time of year, so you guys can go check it out. It's Hearts and Farts, my version of Studs and Duds, and some waivers. So, fun little show.
Let's get to the show. So we had some interesting football this week. I had a great time watching football all through the weekend, all through last night. I missed some of the early Sunday games because my daughter had a lacrosse tournament. So I missed the early Bears game, the drubbing the Bears put on. So I catch all the afternoon games, and I went by my neighbor Joe's garage for the Sunday night game or the Monday night game last night. It's fantasy football season is awesome. And the best thing about it now is that when the game was over last night, what do? We turned on hockey. It's that time of year for the NHL, baby. It is awesome. It just carries over. So I only brought a 12-pack over there. I finished my 12 for the football season, for the football games, and then I had to chip in for Joe's or steal some of Joe's beers to finish the hockey game. So he had work in the morning. I did not today, so I could have stayed out till whenever I came home, drink a couple more beers, watch some of the other hockey highlights. Excellent. But this is not a hockey show. This is a fantasy football show, even though all three of us here are big hockey fans.
But John, you can see fantasy hockey on Fantasy and Frames Tuesday night tonight, 9:30 Eastern time, 8:30 Central. Around the Ice on Fantasy and Frames is the Around the Ice hockey show. So check that out for all you hockey fans.
I love seeing you and Toast on there. It's absolutely fantastic.
Thanks for joining us last week, John. John was a special guest on the hockey show. We did a kickoff Tuesday night for the beginning of the hockey season. We went long, folks. I think it was a 3.5-hour podcast. We were having too much fun talking hockey, telling stories, and watching the Blackhawks opener.
Way too much fun.
Hit you up and self-invite me to the hockey podcast because I would love to talk some puck.
Ooh, you're in. You're in. We're going to get you on there.
You might have two shows in one day with us, whether you like it or not.
Oh, man.
Very good. So, first of all, you can follow me on X, John McGlynn 75. This is Dynasty Evaluation Show. You could find this on the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel, the Dynasty Evaluation, all the podcast listening platforms. You can find me on, I do my Flexims every week. You can find them on Fantasy and Frames, my stuff too. But this is just what we do for fun, man. This is my favorite thing to do. I have some great guests on here, great co-hosts, the Mo-host and JT. But JT, anything else to shout out before we started on our regular show topics?
Oh man, just we're deep diving in here. College football season is crazy. You got a couple college football fantasy leagues with me this year, so you're learning the ins and outs of those. So we're in prime time on there. I'm just absolutely crushed. I have some teams that are just loaded, and my record's awful, and I just can't understand why. It's got me super pissed. We were just talking about it. I'm like bottom of the league in wins losses, but I'm like number 2 in the league in scoring. It is crushing me. But yeah, man, we're football season's here. The Bears have a winning record. The Steelers have a winning record, and the Colts are 500. I'll take it.
It's almost a perfect world, JT. It's
almost.
I think everybody can relate to our conversation about having the highest scoring team in the league and, being 1-5 or, 2-4 and like, what the shit, how am I on the board every week as a number 2 or number 3 or number 4 scorer on Sleeper or on these other sites and have a 1-5 record. It's like, you can't get more unlucky than that. The only thing you got to look at is that, okay, you just got to make the playoffs. That's all you got to do is make the playoffs. Avoid more injuries. Some of these guys are getting hurt. Some guys are underperforming. The Dak Prescotts, Trevor Lawrences, the CeeDee Lambs, the guys that you're expecting they'll come around. All this stuff kind of averages out. We'll figure it out. Well, I hope Dak comes around because he's absolutely killing me. So, it is what it is. But
John, this is where I'm going to do my little speech that if you run a league, you should have at least one of your playoff spots should be for most points scored. And I prefer in dynasty leagues, the last 2 playoff spots are most points scored, not record. That's going to be my little speech for it right now, because I know a couple leagues I'm going to miss the playoffs where I absolutely should be in the playoffs. But in my leagues, all my leagues that I run, at least the final playoff spot is all about total overall points. And in my big dynasty leagues, I do the final 2 playoff spots are overall points. So you might want to think that if you're commission.
You're in a couple of my home leagues, how my scoring goes. I do 4 divisions on purpose. So I get 4 division winners, and then whoever didn't win the division gets the last 2 spots are both the highest points, so that nobody gets robbed. And a lot of times most of the time, those are usually the best teams. The team with the most points that didn't win their division just for luck, for whatever reason happening. But yeah, that's the best way to do it. Absolutely. So JT, you talked about college football for a minute there. I'm in this college football league, and I have a couple leagues. One, it's great because I get every week there's waivers. So I get you only have 1 waiver per week. The entire season, so all you have is 1. So throughout the college season, as it progresses, there's new play. You can get rid of some of the old seniors who aren't producing, pick up some freshmen that are producing, that kind of. But one league I'm in, I didn't even, there's rules in every league that you don't check all the time. But one says I ran out of waivers after 11. I had 11 waivers so far before the season, when the season started. I'm out of waiver, and I cannot do anything the rest of the season. My hands are tied. What the hell is that? And you said you have a league you're going to have 4 the entire season.
A bunch of mine that are they're college leagues that are actually campus to Canton leagues, so they're college and NFL side. They only do 5 waiver moves because they don't want all the supplemental draft picks to get taken the year before if they see people moving up, and so they're trying to prevent really diluting the draft the next year. So they limit the number of pickups and drops. John, something you can do, and a couple people have hit me up this week because I've been a little lax on my waiver pickups in my college leagues. A couple people hit me up offering trades. They want pickups. They want waiver moves. They're like, hey, I'll sell you a draft pick next year early in the draft if you give me a waiver wire pickup this year. So that's an option for you too. You could, if you have somebody you want, you're really eyeing, you can always look at possibly doing that, trade a draft pick or a player. Maybe you have a guy that's a senior, has not got a lot of NFL upside, but scoring some points, and maybe somebody needs them. You can trade them that and get a waiver priority pick. So that's options too if you're in a college league.
I have never done that before. This is a new aspect. I've traded fab, I traded players, I traded future picks, but I've never traded
college side. Yep, you can trade
nice.
Draft picks or trade draft picks or players and get a waiver wire for a waiver wire move. So it's something a little bit new, a little bit different. But I had a couple people hit me up about they were out of waiver wire moves and wanted one of mine.
That's okay. I'm glad we talked about this today, JT, because that makes me pretty happy to actually have options now. I felt like this is crap. The season's not even halfway over yet, and I'm handcuffed with waiver wire moves already. This is BS, but I get it. I should have. This is my fault as a commissioner. I know. I tell everybody all the time, you need to read the rules, and here I am not reading the effing rules, and I'm like, I caught myself, got my junk in a sling right now. So.
When you actually brought it up to me, because I'm in that league too, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize we had that many. I thought we only had like 4 or 5 in that league. So when you're like, oh, we have 11, because I'm one of those people, like, I tend to hold on to mine in college, because if I can get some younger guys or some guys that didn't get drafted and then like kind of have a high upside, I can usually jump in and grab a guy that might not help me that year, but like the next year, I'm going to save myself like a or a 3rd round pick by taking a guy, a big one, Trey Harris. Everybody knows for Ole Miss, smoking right now. He's just killing at Ole Miss. I got him very into the season, like second to last week when he was at Louisiana Tech, and he was playing really well. And there was like talk that he might transfer after the season to a bigger program. And I went and picked him up, and he's been fire for me for the last 2 years at Ole Miss.
I'll get in this college game as soon as it goes, but I have
we're working in, John. It's all right. It's just got to work in that first season. You're just trying to get comfortable, trying to figure it out.
I get it. Let me ask you guys a question real fast before we start going team by team here, okay? And injuries and stuff. I have Dak Prescott and Trevor Lawrence, my only 2 starting quarterbacks, and my team is absolutely stacked besides that. I mean, it's stacked. Would you trade an early 3rd and a late 4th to get Aaron Rodgers right now if I had Devontae Adams on the team?
Yes.
I probably would just to
it's
cover
super
yourself.
Flex dynasty.
Honestly, a 3rd and a 4th for I think I look at dynasty different than most people. Like I look at like if I have 2 bad quarterbacks in a team that's competing now, like a 3rd means nothing to me next year for Aaron Rodgers right now to again just help me compete for the rest of this year. I've made trades like that, honestly, where it's like I've sent in a super flex dynasty and they've got you over a barrel and you really have no, like, I wouldn't even hate you if you sent a 2nd. If you thought you were going to actually win the championship, meaning that 2nd is really like close to a 1st, 3rd. But like, if you can get away with a 3rd and a 4th, yeah, I would do that all day.
Yeah. It's, well, I just took it. It had to be done. I get it. You know, it is what it is, but
I mean, now you're just playing the matchups between the 3, and I think it's totally viable with Rodgers getting an extra weapon. Like even this game he just had, it wasn't that bad for fantasy. It was better than Dak Prescott this week.
Yeah, I feel like if I have a Dak's who's on bye this week. I think Trevor's on bye or somebody's on. I'm down a couple players, and I'm like, man, I don't want to have a team that's absolutely stacked to be the Achilles heel of my quarterbacks. And I've always been a quarterback guy. And the worst part about it was I traded away Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold like 2 years ago to get Dak. And I'm like, man, I could have been fucking stacked right now if I would have just kept my guys, been patient. And I knew those guys were good, but you can't pass that Dak Prescott either. So I don't know.
Hey, John, we got a comment here. Somebody really likes Jack in the comment section. Says, "Look at Jack looking sexy as ever." There you go. There we go. That's what we like to hear.
There we go. Jack is one sexy mother. All right. So what we'll do here is that we got a trade done. All right, great. We talked about my C2C leagues, which nobody gives a shit about except the 20 sickos that play for C2C. So let's get into some injuries real fast. I went to 4 for 4, looked at some injuries this week, the injury report. All right. So thank you very much for the injury. Jordan Mason, AC sprain, timetable 1 to 2 weeks. Travis Etienne, 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring strain. That's a big blow to the Jacksonville Jaguars not having Travis Etienne around. Jerome Ford, Cleveland Browns, hamstring, 2 to 3 weeks. At that point in time, there might be a backfield by committee when he finally comes back with Nick Chubb returning. So I think the window to sell Jerome Ford may have closed already while he was doing good. You had the first couple weeks to kind of get rid of him for draft picks. I think that is over now. You are holding on to Jerome Ford. Tajay Spears, Tennessee, hamstring strain, another 2 to 3 weeks injury. So Tony Pollard got the wheels up kind of thing. Chris Olave, if he's on your rosters, I talked about him on my flexings this week that he was going to have a big game. New quarterback coming in, slinging the ball, was going to look for him all over the field. Gets first or second play. I think he caught the ball and got concussed and it was out. He's had one good week this week. Other than that, he was wide receiver like 25, 28, 82, and 80 something. This week again, one catch for or one drop, one target. It was absolutely terrible. But I mean, you don't want to see concussions, but he is just killing. Somebody sick of him. I'd trade for Chris Olave right now, but it's one of those situations where he's on your team. He's very frustrating, and you can't leave him on the bench. Chris Olave is somebody you have to have in your lineup all the time. So Mike Evans has some kind of injury that's not been disclosed yet. As far as Jeff Mueller says for a fantasy at 4 for 4. Marvin Harrison, concussion, another guy. I think this is his second concussion already, right? Didn't he have one in the first week of the season? I think?
No, he had one at the end of the college season the year before. He got one in the last game against Georgia.
Okay. Well, concussion, Marvin Harrison. We don't want to see anything happen to these young stud receivers. I tried trading a late first, 3 seconds and 2/3 and a 4th for Marvin Harrison this morning, and the guy said no. So I'm like, shit. I mean, I thought it was a lot, but
hey, it was a good attempt. It was a good effort.
Good attempt. Yeah, the guys. He's like, I'm not selling for anything less than what I paid for him, and it's got to be that and some. So I get it. DJ Moore, I faced timetable to return. Nothing. He came back. Jaden Reed, Green Bay Packers. He came back in the game. Nothing special. Dontavian Wicks, shoulder sprain, a couple weeks. Ladd McConkey, concussion. Screening for a back injury, returned to game, good. Quentin Johnson, Chargers, 1 to 2 weeks with an ankle sprain. I traded for Quentin Johnson after he had his 2-touchdown game, thinking maybe he's going to be part of the offense. He looks okay. I don't mind holding on him for a couple years. I think he'll be okay, but I don't think he's going to be a solid number one. But as a flex play for cheap for a 4th-round pick, I'll take Quentin Johnson for that. Darius Slayton, New York Giants. He came back in the game. Dallas Goedert, Eagles, 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring. Trey McBride, Cardinals, right knee, returned to the game. So a couple annoying injuries this week, but nothing like we didn't lose anybody for the season minus a couple defensive players, but that's those guys. We talk about those on the IDP podcast. So as of right now,
a lot of hamstring injuries right now. Guys are killing me with the hamstrings.
I'm willing to donate my hamstrings to the NFL because my God,
seriously.
Drink some water, you guys.
Get some of these guys healthy. John, we got a trade question up here. Let's pop this up for Mark G. Thanks for jumping in here. He says, great content, guys. He's 5-1. Only good tight end is Pittsburgh Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth. Would you trade a second for Kittle or trade a first for Pitts and trade a 3rd rounder to get Pollard? What do you guys think on this one? Only got Muth. Would you give up a second for Kittle, or would you rather trade a first for Pitts and then maybe try to trade a 3rd for Pollard?
I'm going to say if this is a tight end premium league, I would trade a second for Kittle. Probably, I traded, I think, a late first for Kittle last season, figuring he'd have a comeback with some receiver tensions on the team on the 49ers. He's been banged out a little bit, but when he's in there, he's solid. So a second for Kittle. Hopefully, it's a late second, and hopefully, this is a big tight end premium because then you're getting even more. But I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago. I traded in a C2C league. I traded a Debbie depleted, probably late first, and a Debbie depleted second for Kyle Pitts last week to somebody who's just sick of having on their team. That is an absolute steal. I mean, that's like highway robbery. So,
if I'm reading this right, though, he's getting Pitts and Pollard and a 3rd for his first. I would do that deal.
He's trying to trade a first and a 3rd to get Pitts and Pollard. So he's thinking the first will equate to Pitts and the 3rd rounder would equate to Pollard. He fixed that he kind of gave me a better description of that. So I like Kittle for a second. If you do need running back help, I don't love giving up a first for Pitts. I know he's still young and he's looked better with Cousins. I'd rather take a second and Kittle. But if I'm get the guy says, hey, I'll give you a Pitts for a first, but he also wants a 3rd for Pollard, I could see you making that move, especially if if you got one of these guys that all have hamstring injuries, maybe Pollard's the way to go and add a guy. I've got Pollard in a couple leagues. I wasn't big on him coming into the season, but he's actually been fairly decent in what has been a tough running back year.
That's where I'm looking, is more just the depth that I'm getting from a starting running back that's doing well in Tony Pollard. I think the combination of him and Pitts is worth the first to me. And again, I look at 3rds and 4ths as very much throwaway picks that are easy to attain, even in draft season. Like right before the draft, people trade me 4th round picks all the time. People just generally don't value 3rd and 4th round draft capital the same way. So I look at those as like throwaways in a sense of, if it'll grease the wheels to get the deal done and I'm getting the players I want, like I'm just looking at it as like, okay, I'm giving up a first. And if I win, again, a late first for Pitts and Pollard, sure, I throw in that 3rd to grease those wheels, but the second for Kittle is fine too. Like if you don't need the running back and Pollard is just going to, flounder on your bench. Like I get not wanting to give up the first, but in most dynasty leagues, like depth becomes such a huge concern because there's such a lack of waivers that I would definitely want to acquire a starting running back and the tight end that I like a tight end upgrade, because Muth is suffering from the same problem Kyle Pitts had before, which is Arthur Smith.
Right.
Yeah, I like Muth a ton. He's just not getting a lot of targets. He got robbed of a touchdown last week that really hurt me in a bunch of leagues. They just got to figure out a way to get him a few more targets. They're just not throwing the ball a ton. And for him, it's just he's not getting a million targets. And I'm still playing him in a lot of leagues, but I definitely could see if you're 5-1 wanting to look for an upgrade right now. I can definitely see that.
Well, there's injuries.
We got another one here. John, I was going to say, we got another one here. This is a long one, so we'll throw it out there and read it through. So he's got a lot of players here. So he's asking, do I drop Calvin Ridley for Juju, drop Braylon Allen for Aaron Rodgers now that he just picked up Devontae Adams in a big trade this morning? He says he's not confident in K1. He's got K1, Brees, Mixon, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brian Thomas Jr., Kincaid, Irving, Allen, Bigsby, Chase Brown, CMC, Michael Pittman, Worthy. So he's got a lot of guys in here. He said he just traded away last week Brees Hall, traded away Lamar for Brees Hall and Chase Brown. So he just got those guys. So he got rid of Lamar. So he's, kind of talking about, should he maybe go out there and try to get Aaron Rodgers after getting the trade for Adams. What do you guys think? Who would you maybe drop in that scenario if he was needing a QB to pick up Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, my gut instinct is, first of all, check your settings because, you shouldn't have to drop someone if MHJ is declared out still, depending on your league settings, and you can put them on IR. You could just feasibly pick up Juju without having to drop someone, assuming that's not a possibility, and I am forced to drop a player. Like, I'm fine dropping Ridley just because, shout out to Andy Holloway of the Fantasy Footballers. I mentioned it on my show. He put out a very sad video of all 8 of Calvin Ridley's targets in this last game from Will Levis, and calling them targets is a laughable joke, right? Because they were either completely uncatchable or contested by 3 different players. Like, it was probably the worst set of targets I think I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, Ridley at this point, basically droppable for any kind of decent wide receiver plug and play. My only issue is dropping Braylon Allen. I mean, I guess it's fine. Like, as we get further in the season, we've seen so many injuries. You have Brees Hall. Are you really just like flippantly dropping your handcuff just in case? Like, I feel like, honestly, I'd rather drop Tank Bigsby because I'm not going to start him over most of these other guys, is how I feel. And he's splitting work with Dearness Johnson, even if Travis Etienne misses time. I mean, Irving is in a 3-headed, timeshare. I guess if I really had to, it would be Braylon Allen and Ridley are the drops. But again, I feel like you find a way to not drop Braylon Allen. Honestly, I would even just drop Ridley for Aaron Rodgers if I'm really that hurting at quarterback, and I just ignore Juju.
I think that's the move. I think if you really need a quarterback, I can see dropping Ridley and going Aaron Rodgers. I want Allen. I want Braylon Allen, especially since I have Brees Hall. I want both those guys. Like you said, I definitely want those guys. Tank, you got to hold now with Etienne with the injury news, and he's been better than him this year. I think you got to hold him. I like Bucky Irving a lot. That's probably the next guy. But, man, like you said, with injuries for running backs this year, I just don't know if I want to give him up. I'd rather give up some wide receivers. I'd rather not take Juju if I had, and I love Juju, but I think for me, yeah, if I had to make a move, I wanted Aaron Rodgers, I'd drop Ridley for Aaron Rodgers. Would be my first move. If I don't think I need Rodgers, then I don't have a problem dropping Ridley for Juju.
That's best case scenario for sure. No. All right. Well, so we talked about some injuries. We talked about some guys. Let's jump to the waiver wire here. Speaking of that, so what we can alternate here if you guys want. What quarterbacks you pick up this week? JT, Jack, either one of you guys jump in for the quarterbacks. Which are your quarterbacks who are on your radar for the waiver wire this week?
I could jump in. I mean, depending on what kind of league setting you're in, if you're in single quarterback, super flex, single quarterback, Aaron Rodgers is maybe if he's out there, if he's not on a team right now. Justin Herbert, it hasn't been pretty so far this year, but he hasn't been horrible. He's got a decent schedule coming up, and he's actually gotten the most pass attempts of the season. The last 2 weeks, back-to-back weeks, had the most pass attempts. So I think they're going to, continue to increase throwing the ball a little bit more, especially as his ankle gets healthy. So he's a guy that's available in a ton of, if you're in redraft leagues, he's available. I think, man, it's a lot. He's a super small percentage. He's like owned in under 40% of like one QB league. So he's a guy you could go out and grab there. Obviously, super flex, it's going to be a whole lot harder. There's not a lot of guys out there all the time. So I'm not sure if Jack's got some guys he's kind of looking at, he thinks he'd pick up there. Obviously, if you're an Anthony Richardson owner, you should already have Joe Flacco. If you haven't picked him up and he's still out there, then obviously go get him again just because you need that insurance. If AR isn't going to play, I know a couple people. I have AR in a ton of leagues, but I have Flacco in most of them, so I got him in there. But I saw a couple people who didn't have him, and they kind of got stuck, and they just ended up playing AR, and then he ended up not playing, and they just scored a 0. So that definitely hurt.
Yeah, JT, I'm gonna let you take the running backs too, just because I know you got some big names to talk about.
I actually do have some quarterbacks I want to mention.
Let jump in here with some couple guys.
With Andy Dalton, keep an eye on him, especially if he hits waivers in either single quarterback or super flex after a couple like kind of performances. He is going to have Washington, so it's a decent spot start. Drake May in single quarterback, I would just stash. Like, he looked a lot better than I was expecting, to be honest. So just kind of a stash there. But AOC is the one for Superflex. He's actually going to be like decently available in a lot of Superflex leagues. Aiden O'Connell, if you're not familiar, Las Vegas Raiders. Survived the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. That's all I can say good about him right now. But the fact that he did that, honestly, he's got some decent matchups coming up. And if you're just really hurting with injuries and needing that depth, AOC, decent little ad.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm. All right, JT, running backs. You got some talking to do about some of your guys, your favorite players.
Well, I mean, in Dynasty, at least one of these guys should be on your roster for sure, and that's Ray Davis. They finally got a chance to start. I said if Cook got hurt for any reason, he would be a monster handcuff this year, and he had an awesome Monday night game. Looked fantastic running the ball. They gave him plenty of carries. He also, I told people, underrated receiver out of the backfield. Had a great catch down the field on a long one. I think it was about a 42-yarder where everybody was like, Josh Allen, don't throw that ball. And he did it anyway, and he completed it. Great catch by Ray Davis. But 20 carries, 97 yards, just missed that 100-yard mark. Was killing me, but had 3 catches for 55 yards. So no TDs for him, but a lot of a lot of play, a lot of touches. Gotta love that out of him. If Cook misses any more time, I think Ray Davis is an RB2 for sure start. A guy, you gotta love him. So if you're in a league and he's not out there, or if he is on your bench, like now it was a chance. If Cook is out, this is when you got to give it in your lineup. A guy you can go out there and probably pick up off waivers. And again, Ray Davis is probably out there if you're in a redraft league. So if he is, go out and grab him for sure. A couple other young guys that I was going to bring up this week. My boy Sean Tucker finally got a chance with the Buccaneers. I've been telling people who want to listen for the last 2 years that I think he's better than Rachaad White. I saw a bunch of online arguments about Rachaad White's only bad because his O-line's bad, and then Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker just crushed that, playing awesome with the exact same O-line. So I don't believe that statement at all. Great game for him. Obviously, Tampa Bay's offense looked amazing. Bucky Irving got the start, got 14 touches, 81 yards and a touch. Tucker, 14 for 136 and a touch. Also got 3 catches for 56 and a touchdown. So I'm hoping this is enough of a performance that Sean Tucker starts making his way into the lineup a little bit more often. It is going to be ugly here if Rachaad White gets back. Is it going to be 3-headed monster with him, Irving, and Tucker? I don't know, but I'm stashing Tucker anyway. I'm picking him up anywhere I can get him. If for some reason he's out there in Dynasty, which I did see quite a few people drop him this year when he dropped a third on the depth chart at the beginning of the year behind Bucky Irving, there is a chance you could go out there and grab him in Dynasty. If so, absolutely, I would do it. I love him. He was one of my top running backs coming in before the heart issue last year, kind of just screwed him up in the draft, ended up not getting drafted because of it, undrafted free agent. So he's the guy. And then the last 2 guys I'll bring up real quick. Our two rookies, Tyrone Tracy for the Giants. If Singletary continues to stay out, Tyrone Tracy's getting a ton of touches. We know this Giants team wants to run the ball. They want to hold it as much as they can. So Tyrone Tracy, I think, is a must add if he's still out there in any of your leagues. You redraft as well as Dynasty. He's a guy you want to grab. And then my last guy is Kami Vidal from the Los Angeles Chargers. Not a ton of touches, but now they're saying Gus Edwards is definitely gone for quite a while here. He's on IR. That means Vidal moves up right behind Dobbins. We know Dobbins' injury history. Let's hope he doesn't get hurt this year. But I think Vidal is a guy that's worth a stash. I think he's going to start. He was kind of those sneaky guys during Dynasty that people were drafting, kind of started moving up draft boards when people weren't sure who was going to be the running back. I think he's going to work his way a little bit more into the lineup. Probably not a guy who can play right away, but definitely if anything happens to Dobbins, this team wants to run the ball. So he could see, maybe 10 or 12 touches a game moving forward. So Vidal's the other guy I want to see at running back.
Man,
Jack, how about you?
Isaac Guerrero, to me, honestly, might be a priority over every name you just said, because we've seen it so often with the San Francisco running backs. He had 99 yards subbing in for Jordan Mason. And now that Mason's got an AC joint sprain, that's the kind of thing that could definitely linger or, come with potential re-injury. That's the kind of thing also that's going to come with a lot of pain tolerance issues. So I really like all the names you said. But I think, especially if I need the spot start right now, Guerrero I might have prioritized even above all those dudes. And then, getting real deep, Pierre Strong. We talked about Jerome Ford and the hammy. The only other real viable running back until Nick Chubb comes back is Deonta Foreman, who looks like he's running in mud. So we saw Pierre Strong get some work. I think that's worth a really deep stash. That's the kind of guy you might actually find on waivers in a dynasty league.
Yeah, how pissed were you when you saw Isaac Guerrero run 87 yards and then stop at the 1 yard line to run a clock out, and the next play, Kyle Juszczyk runs in the end zone.
John, can we talk about this real quick? Can we talk about this? This is driving me nuts. I am so tired of people saying, "Oh, that's a smart football play. He went down." Dude, you're going up 3 touchdowns. You score there. No, it's not a smart football play. Score the touchdown. These guys have convinced every guy that they need to fall to try to run the clock. Hey, instead of trying to run the clock out, just score and win. They've convinced every one of these guys that's the smart football play to go down. It's not the smart football play. The only time it's the smart football play to go down is if you score and the other team now has the ball back with a chance to tie or win. That's the only time it's the smart football play to score. If you're up 10, going down and taking a knee to run the clock out isn't the smart play. Score the touchdown, go up 17. Right. They're not going to score 17 points in the last 10 seconds or the last 30, 45 seconds of the game. Just score the touchdown. And I said it. I was freaking out. My girlfriend looked at me. 5 seconds later, I was like, this announcer's going to say a smart football play. He's like, oh, what a smart football play. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a dumb football play. Score the freaking touchdown. Oh, it's driving me insane. The fact that
Juszczyk is just insulting after the fact, too.
Well, again, just score. This whole, we have to try to clock out the time exactly so we hold the ball the whole time and don't ever give them the ball back. You do that when you're up 3. But again, these guys fall up 3, and I'm like, oh, now you're playing the clock game and trying to just score the touchdown and go up 10. What are you doing? It drives me nuts. It's different if you're falling in a tie ball game with 45 seconds left, and you're like, hey, we can run it down and kick the field goal. But even then, I never want to leave it up to a kicker. Screw that. That's how you get in trouble when you guys miss field goals. But again, they're okay. Well, we ran out the clock and kicked the field goal to win, as opposed to we scored the touchdown. They got the ball back with a minute left and a chance to tie. That's maybe where you can make the argument for the smart football play. But these guys killing me up 9. Oh, let's not score the touchdown and go up 16 with 35 seconds left. Are you serious? It's so dumb. It drives me insane.
Absolutely insane. Getting our question here. Redraft trade at full PPR. Chris Godwin and Brian Thomas for Cooper Kupp and Drake London. What side are you guys?
Ooh.
Chris Godwin is on a tear right now. And this was the year. I love Chris Godwin. I've had him since his rookie year on almost every team I had. And this year I'm like, he's hurt. he gets hurt all the time. He has flashes. He's got boom bust games with Mike Evans as the other boom bust guy. He's kind of like, he's already 29. What am I doing here? I got rid of him. And he's going ham this year. He just smoked me. Him and Baker Mayfield just destroyed me in the league we played this week. So, I mean, Brian Thomas is a great dynasty asset. I do like him on the field now. I think he's the shiny apple, the rookie that everybody wants to succeed. And I do like him. I mean, the big question here is: do you take Drake London or Brian Thomas? Because I took Godwin over Cooper Kupp for sure. Do you take Drake London over Brian Thomas? Is there that much of a difference where London's better than Brian Thomas? I don't think so. I take the Godwin and Brian Thomas side.
See, I take Brian Thomas Jr. over Drake London, and that's the deciding factor for me. I think BTJ is a true superstar, though. I had him. I'm a known BTJ truther. I had him above everybody except for Neighbors and MHJ pre-draft, even above Rome, which a lot of people had them flipped. But when he went to the Jags, I was like, slam, absolute slam. I have him in a ton of dynasty. I have him in a ton of redraft even. He's actually one of my most popular redraft picks this year because he was going in the 9th round. I was like, there's no way this guy doesn't hit. Even if T-Law is kind of myopic, BTJ is just a better version of Calvin Ridley, essentially, and what they were doing last season. So I was all over BTJ. So I might be a little biased on the BTJ side, but when you add in Chris Godwin, who moved back to the slot and has been crushing it all year, yeah, that Kupp. The problem is Cooper Kupp's just so old and has dealt with so many injuries. Yes, he is dominant when he's there, but the best ability is availability, and I don't know how reliable that's going to be for the rest of his career. And as nice as Drake London is, it's okay, that's great for as long as we have Kirk Cousins, which might be a year or two, and then we'll see if that develops with Penix or whatever other quarterback that comes to town. But I don't view him as being as good as Mike Evans, because Mike Evans has been doing it his whole career, getting 1,000 yards every season, no matter who the quarterback is. I know he had Brady and Baker at the end, but he had to deal with a lot of kind of scrubs at the beginning. So
I'm actually a little surprised you guys went with that. I'm in with you guys. I love BTJ, man. He is one of my favorite guys. When I saw him at the combine this year, I was like, oh, dude, he's clear cut wide receiver 4 for me. And he was right behind Rome for me. I was they're right next to each other. I'll take it even in redraft. Godwin is the clear cut because Kupp has been injured. Godwin, that offense is going to keep rolling all year. And I like BTJ better than Kupp and London personally, so I'm with you guys on that one. So that's a clear 3 for 3. We got one more question about the running backs that popped up from Spencer. He says, does Bucky Irvin still have fantasy value when White comes back after Tucker looked so good last week? Yes, Bucky has value. I think Bucky wins that, takes that job. He's looked way more efficient, way better than Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White's going to be the odd man out by the end of the year. I think Bucky has just looked really, really good. He reminds me of what he did in college. I was nervous. I had to tell people I was nervous after the combine. He had one of the worst combines I'd ever seen. I was like, man, I feel like this guy's such a better football player than his combine, and he's showing that he's playing pretty well. He's going to be in the mix for sure. I think the real question is how much is Tucker going to get? Even though he had a great game last week, I like him. I'm picking him up, but I still think Tucker technically is probably the third guy. I hope he passes White, but I think Bucky right now is in the lead to possibly take that role from White. So I think definitely Bucky's worth holding on to or worth picking up if he's out there.
I both agree and disagree because I don't think they view Bucky Irving as a starting workhorse running back, even if he the starter's role. But I think his role that he does have is the most concrete and consistent on the team, because regardless of whether it's Sean Tucker or Rachaad White, Bucky Irving is the lightning to the thunder of whichever of those other running backs is supposed to be. And we can talk about this a little bit later, but it comes up with the Jags and it comes up with the Bills. It's I actually don't mind running back by committee when it's two guys and they have clearly defined roles and abilities in what they do. But as soon as a third guy gets in the mix, it's like once you get that three-headed hound, now you're screwed because now everybody is losing value and touches because the three-way split, it just never works. So if it's two guys, like if it's just Bucky Irving and Tucker, or if it's just Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, and again, the constant in both of those delineations of the running back committee is Bucky Irving, so he retains value, but they all lose value if they're all available. And they all gain value as soon as either Rachaad White or Sean Tucker is not involved.
I actually like that. That's Jack. You're right on with that. I think you're right. Bucky's going to stay in the mix. He's going to stay in the mix no matter who else plays, no matter what. I think the value is like, yeah, what you said. Is it White or Tucker that takes the hit?
I agree 100%. Good job, Jack. What about some receiver waiver wire targets here?
Okay, I gotta cut in here because I gotta brag, and it's a double brag. So this is going all the way back here to Wednesday, May 29th. This random fan, Hot Beans, came up and started asking me about some undrafted free agent picks, and I named him two guys that were really at the top of my priorities in terms of like this is after the draft has already run and you're going deep dive, just adding some UDFAs in like 14, 16 team leagues. Frank Gore Jr. was the running back, but the wide receiver was my guy, Bub Means. I'm the only Bub Means truther in the fantasy football world. Ain't nobody that was on the Bub Means corner. And I even had joked about it with the guy saying like, yeah, you know, Tyrone Tracy was my sleeper, but then everybody came on my corner and pushed me off the block. And so now Bub Means is my secret sleeper that nobody else is going to talk about. Today at 11:50 a.m. he texts me in all caps, Bub Means time, baby. So, Bub
that
Means,
is fantastic.
in all of your dynasty leagues, go out and add Bub Means. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, are the New Orleans Saints wide receivers. He seems to have a connection with the Rattler Snake. So holy crap, Amari Cooper to the Bills I'm seeing in the chat coming across too. So big news in the NFL for wide receiver trades. So Jerry Jeudy is go add Jerry Jeudy for the Browns. But yeah, no, Bub Means is like an actual like super deep dynasty ad, but like legitimately go add Jerry Jeudy. I think the other thing I love to say here too is check who gets dropped. Christian Watson, I saw him on waivers in one of my leagues because people couldn't hold him. DeAndre Hopkins is another one where he's still going to be useful to the Titans. He's still going to have games. And if you need just a cover spot, he's getting dropped in places. Calvin Ridley's getting dropped in places. See if maybe he doesn't get traded somehow like Amari or Devontae. So keep eyes on guys like that, but then getting deeper, Pop Douglas, Rashad Bateman, and then the Rams wide receivers. Cooper Kupp is supposedly coming back. Maybe week 7 or 8, we could see him. But I still like Tutu Atwell above all the other Rams wide receivers. I think he retains a role regardless. And then deeper shot, Demarcus Robinson's probably still out there in a lot of leagues.
Who does this Amari Cooper trade that just happened? Who does it affect the most on the Bills? Is it going to be? Are they just not seeing what they want to see out of Keon Coleman? Is this going to kill Khalil Shakir? What's the story here?
This affects Josh Allen. I mean, the wide receivers weren't doing anything really anyways. And that was kind of the problem. And it's funny because Josh Allen has made me eat crow and then be right and then eat crow again. Because it's like he was great and then he sucked. Went 9 for 30 against the Texans. Like the offense looked myopic. It was starting to look predictable under Joe Brady, which is kind of the tag on him is his offenses are kind of easy to read. And so as the season gets along, defenses kind of just pile up on them. But you add Amari Cooper into this mix, and all of a sudden he's got a number 1 wide receiver again. Like I thought removing Stephon Diggs would affect him a lot more than people were giving credit to, and we saw it for a couple games. But we also saw him be great. I think this really affects Josh Allen and Amari Cooper, who now, I mean, he escapes the clutches of Voldemort, and it's like he's found his Harry Potter.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I love that because I actually don't think it hurts the other Bills guys as much as they needed a number one to kind of open things up for everybody else. I really think those guys are going to be about the same. It's just now it helps the whole Bills offense and that they can stay on field. Yeah, I agree, Jack. If you have Amari Cooper, you're pumped because now his value is just
Bengals because they play. If you need a defense this week, they're playing the Browns. The Browns
are going to be bad. Yeah, this might be the one.
Amari Cooper and Jerome Ford now.
Yeah, absolutely. Cooper, that helps Cooper a ton because I didn't want any part of him, but I'll take Amari Cooper on the Bills for sure.
I hated him on the Browns. I traded him straight up for James Conner. It was a league where I drafted like 4 or 5 running backs and then kind of forgot wide receiver. And then so like after the draft, the person hit me up preseason and offered Amari Cooper straight up for James Conner. I was like, that's not bad. This was before we'd seen Deshaun Watson in action. And I've been eating that one on the chin, but Amari Cooper is still on my roster, and so is Jerry Jeudy. So now I'm like ecstatic about this trade. I just gained an elevated version of Amari Cooper potentially, and I get a wide receiver in Jerry Jeudy who might just get gross volume.
Well, Jeudy should be getting as much volume as it can get. Now, the problem is the Browns offense can't even stay on the field for more than 3 plays because they can't get a first down. But Jeudy should get targets. I mean, he should get a lot of freaking targets moving forward. That's for sure.
All 17 of Amari Cooper's non-catchable targets.
Yeah, exactly. John, the only guys I really had for redraft were Romeo Doubs for the Packers. If he got dropped in the league, he, with some of the injuries and stuff going on, I know that Packers wide receiver room is tough to figure out week to week, but he did have 2 touchdowns last week. So he's a guy I would definitely consider, especially if I'm super short. And then Juju, my guy, Juju, a little resurgence. People forgot about him, had the one big week, but then had the bye week. So there's a chance people maybe didn't pick him up because of the bye week, especially if you're in a redraft league with shorter benches. You might be able to get him a little cheaper and easier this week because people kind of forgot about him. So somebody's got to catch passes there for the Chiefs, and Juju knows that system. I don't think he'll have as big a week as he had 2 weeks ago the rest of the year, but I think he still could be a solid flex play for you.
I agree with that. There's some other guys out there we got to talk about, like people that are rostered probably a lot. Josh Downs, obviously, Jacoby Myers. With this news about Deontay Adams getting traded, Jalen Tolbert. But Jalen Tolbert, and how many people? Jalen Tolbert's been on my wish list for a couple years now, and he dropped like a for sure. Dropped a for sure pass right in his hands in the game too. He's not a reliable receiver as far as I traded out for David Bell and Jalen Tolbert in so many leagues, and I could kick myself in the ass for making those moves now. But Jalen Tolbert's another one that you could possibly look at, and then like Pop Douglas is another one that probably gets a little bit of a little boost this week, but that's the receiver's kind of tough this year, man. It's a mishwash of guys not producing.
We got a question here from Spencer. Who's going to be better this year, Worthy or Juju? I think Worthy is the guy I'd rather have. I think he's got the bigger play potential. I'd rather have Worthy than Juju, but I just think Juju, if you're needing depth at wide receiver, is a decent spot in that. He's on a good offense and they need help at wide out. I think Juju's a nice pickup, but I prefer Worthy. Don't you guys this year? Obviously, Dynasty, no doubt in Dynasty, but in redraft.
Yeah, Dynasty, obviously. I'm thinking more in redraft. In a vacuum, Worthy's more talented and has more upside, but I think it's dependent on my team makeup and it also depends on if it's full PPR. If it's standard, it's Worthy for sure. If you could make an argument in full PPR that Juju is the more consistent player as an essentially possession wide receiver for Mahomes. Like, of the guys that's going to get 5 for 50 every week out of these two, that's Juju's role. But Worthy to me is like, it's not just that he can catch the long one, it's he can run in touchdowns on the ground game. They use him as a gadget weapon. I like his upside, but I want Worthy on my 6-0 team. I don't know if I need him on my 2-4 team that's struggling to just like put up consistent points week to week.
Yeah, agreed. How about some tight ends? Any tight ends floating around out this year, this week that you guys want to mention?
I think it's important again to watch for drops. We said it with the wide receivers, but with the tight ends again, like Hunter Henry, widely dropped when it was Jacoby Brissett. He's on tons of waivers, and he just caught a really nice touchdown from Drake May. Should see some upside, hopefully, with the young gun in at quarterback. And then like Zach Ertz, just perennially like picked up, started, dropped. Like if you need 4 for 60, I get it. Kind of deeper, Jatavian Sanders saw the most volume that he's seen in his young rookie season. If that keeps, going, that might be a little trend. And Jawan Johnson, I think, again, if Taysom Hill continues to miss and they're missing some wide receivers, he already had 3 for 48 last week, and that could see a little uptick if they just need like some receiving options.
Yeah, the only other guy I was going to say other than Hunter Henry was if you need a guy, he's not showing a lot of upside, but if you just need some points, some production, Zach Ertz is getting about 3-4 catches for about 30 or 40 every week. So he's not getting you a ton, but he's getting you, 5 to 8 to 10 points, depending on if you have a tight end premium or not. So he's getting a consistent 4 targets a week, 4 or 5 targets. So if you're just desperate because there's nobody out there, Zach Ertz for the Commanders is a decent pickup.
Hurts till it hurts is right. Absolutely. All right, so we got through injuries and waivers. Let's get to the meat of the show here, which is the news, NFL news and rumors. So we're going to go team by team. JT gets the odds, Jack gets the even. So we'll start out real fast with just simple question here. JT, is Caleb going to be the best quarterback in Bears history?
He's definitely got a real good shot at it. Obviously, they haven't had a great history overall. I mean, Jim McMahon probably, because of the Super Bowl win, is going to be up there as far as that is concerned. Then from there, I mean, probably Jay Cutler is probably the most talented QB that the Bears have had since Caleb Williams. So I think Caleb Williams has an absolute fantastic shot at being the best quarterback in Bears history.
Yes, that was kind of a toss-up question just because I traded for Caleb Williams in a bunch of leagues, and I know some people listening who will comment on the show or tell me later, like, oh, shut up, like Bears fans around here with my home leagues that I traded for. So I just had to kind of rub that one in. But we'll get to some serious questions.
I picked them up off of waivers in 2 one quarterback redraft leagues last week and played him. Boom, it was nice.
4 touchdowns and that's absolutely
right.
Crazy. Jack, Bengals. What is Eric All's ceiling in this offense?
I think it's lower than people think. I looked at Eric All when I was doing the pre-draft rankings for the tight ends. He did crack the top 10 simply because he went to tight end U, and I think he gets a lot more credit for that than anything else. His game is just incredibly mid. Like, he's just kind of jack of all trades, and I say that kind of as a diss of like he's kind of decent at everything but not great at anything. So I think he's fine for the Bengals, but I think the Bengals too is just a bad team for you to target a tight end in general because they'll mix all 3 guys in. They don't care. It could be Drew Sample have games randomly. Like, they mix all their tight ends, so it's Sample, Gesicki, and All. And it'll always be just a mix of random news. I don't think he ever ascends to be like a top 12 tight end. If that's what you're expecting, then I would say that he falls short of expectations.
Yeah. JT, Bills. Well, we already answered one Bills question, but I got one more for you. How much is Ray Davis going nuts going to hurt the James Cook value going forward right now? Because James Cook, I think, has been overextending his skis with the way he's been playing this year. With his injury, you get some guys creeping in, like Ray Davis, who I know was one of your favorite players back in the day. I mean, you've been barking the Ray Davis chant since the rookie drafts were going on. What does Ray Davis cut into James Cook's value?
With the injury, I think it cuts way in his value. If he comes back and is pretty healthy, I still think it's Cook by a pretty wide margin for the Bills, but I definitely think Ray Davis earned himself some more touches and some more playing time. So he was probably more around a 20% share on offense as far as getting some plays in there. I think he's going to slightly move that up. I think Ray Davis is definitely going to be in the mix now. Depending on how the injury seriousness and if it bothers Cook, it will make a difference going forward. But I definitely think Ray Davis is here to stay. I think he's definitely going to start seeing some more action, but I don't think this thing is anywhere near a 50-50 or anything like that just yet, unless, Cook struggles with injury, fumbling woes come back, something like that. But I think Ray Davis, I think this is the start of Ray Davis starting to really prove himself.
Ray Davis is a good between the tackles guy, and I'm not sure he's so much of a. He's good. He can catch the ball in the backfield.
He catches the ball better than people think he does. He's a much better receiver than people think he is.
I think he's a really good like screen pass and like kind of wheel route guy. Down the field last night, I saw him bobble that catch. It hit his hands like 3 times to catch it. I get that he can catch the ball. I'm not saying he can't, but I think it's going to be James Cook catching the ball. Probably Ray Davis will be. Ray Davis is probably probably better between the tackles than James Cook. I would argue that. I'm not saying 100%, but this is definitely a situation to monitor for sure. Anything, it's a good problem for the Bills. For Jack, Broncos, are you hanging on to Javonte or picking up Audric Estime or just walking away from both of them?
If I could theoretically walk away from both, I would. But if I have to pick between them, I'm still going to hold on to Javonte Williams. I just don't think Audric Estime is that much better coming off injury that he's just going to take over. If anything, it's going to, again, be another three-headed backfield. So I would prefer to be out on both, but if I'm picking one, it's Javonte.
JT, Browns. How long can the Watson contract keep him on the field? We just saw them trade away probably their best receiver. What's going to happen here?
I mean, this is just a nightmare scenario for Cleveland. You know me, I've been saying for 2 years I'm out on Deshaun Watson. I was like, he's never coming back. Texas, Houston Texans, Deshaun Watson. I'm like, that guy is over and done with. People didn't believe me. Now all I see on X is everyone basically saying exactly what I said for the last 2 years. They're like, he's finished. I'm like, yeah, I've been saying this for a long time. If it's a coaching decision, I think Jameis Winston starts next week. But I think this is a ownership decision. This is a GM decision. I mean, I think they're like, we got to play him. We're paying him all this money. We got to play him. I think that's a terrible idea. I think I think you got to look at it as sunk cost at this point. I mean, I'd be looking at any way to get out of this money. I know they're going to be screwed in this thing no matter what, but if you're looking at straight football wise, Jameis is the answer right now. Maybe he goes in and plays terrible too, because this team is not good right now, but man, Deshaun Watson's not giving you any confidence in his game or that he can do anything. I mean, man, you start looking at some of the advanced metric stats for him. They are just, they're bad, like real bad. They're some of the worst guys in the last 10 years. Like he's got stats worse than them. It's ugly. His fantasy stats are not good, but they're slightly tolerable if you just look at the stats. But man, when you look at everything else, it's a dumpster fire. This is the Browns they're screwed. They're screwed. They've got to make a decision one way or the other, but I don't know if it may. Honestly, at this point, I don't know if there is a good decision. I think there is. If it's me, I'm playing Jameis Winston. If anything, I'm just saying, hey, let's fake another shoulder injury. Let's, you need a couple of weeks off. Let's talk about it and see what Jameis can do, because it's ugly as can be right now, and it's not going to get better anytime soon, I don't think. I don't know how you can stay with him when you just traded his best wide receiver when he's already playing terrible. Like at this point, I'm like, am I just blowing it up if I'm the Browns? Because I'm not sure what they're doing now. If you saw the Cooper trade,
I would try to eat half that money and get rid of him like that. Just do something that you get.
The Broncos did it with Russ. Sometimes you just got to be like, hey man, we screwed up. Yeah. Like not like the Browns haven't screwed up before. So it's like, yeah, it might be just be like. And if they finish as bad as they could, trading away Cooper here, and they could get a top pick, you telling me the Browns, even if they owe him all this money and they get a top 3 pick, that they're not going to go QB?
Right.
I think they're going to think about it. They're definitely going to consider it.
Jack, Buccaneers, are they the best team in the NFC?
Yes, And it is because, hilariously enough, they have the best quarterback in the division. And we just talked about the Browns. It's a perfect lead. And shout out to my guy, Bayou Bengal, at the top of the show, commenting on my bird's nest and my beautiful looks. But he also shared an important graphic from Fox NFL that the Browns are 0-26 on their last 26 third downs with Lord Voldemort, aka Deshaun Watson. Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, has been clutch city, baby. He is coming through for the Bucks in a big way. I think on paper, the Bucks and Atlanta are actually very close. You look at the wide receivers, better on the Bucks. You look at the tight end and the running back, better arguably on the Falcons. You look at the quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield, both kind of have their own ups and downs. So I think, and the defenses are actually pretty even too. So when it comes down to is, I do believe in Baker Mayfield and kind of just the way that he has this team behind him and the chemistry that the Bucks have, and this, the world is against us mantra. Everyone was expecting them to regress with the departure of Dave Canales. And I think Todd Bowles is an underrated coach. So I'm going with the coaching and the quarterback in a slight edge. I do think they are better than the Falcons overall and end up winning the division. So yes, the Bucks are the best in the NFC South.
JT, I'm going to pick apart one thing you said right there. It's a yes or no answer. Is Cade Otton better than Kyle Pitts?
Oh, that's tough for me.
So I said arguably. I did say arguably for tight end and running back. And
yeah, I'd say yes. I like Otton better than Pitts personally.
I do too.
I do. I like Cade Otton. Sorry, I do.
Yeah, Cade Otton was legitimately though why I said arguably, because I think it's clear that Bijan in a decent offense is better than Rachaad White and even Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, no matter how much we love those guys. But the argument was very much like, is Kyle Pitts better than Cade Otton?
It had to be asked. It had to be asked. It was a great,
I think they're pretty close.
JT, Cardinals. I used a couple, not a couple. I used a first-round pick and a couple different rookie drafts to get Trey Benson. How bad am I screwed?
I think you're still all right. I think Trey Benson's going to be okay. I said at the beginning of the year, they were going to work him in. It was going to be the James Conner show all year. And then Benson, possibly if you get a Conner injury, they get to use him all the time, or near the second half of the season, you're going to see a lot more Benson. I have Benson all over the place, and I was not expecting to play him really much before week 10. I just didn't think he would get in the lineup, that offense, or get in the lineup and then really, learn that offense and be a factor. So I'm not bailing on him yet. Hold on to him. He's still got time. And again, James Conner's been good. He hasn't been hurt yet, but he's been hurt every year of his career. So it's coming at some point. So don't bail on him yet, because you're going to get some games out of him.
There you go. Jack, Chargers. Justin Herbert has only 80 completions so far this season. Is he even startable in Superflex leagues?
No. I wanted to say yes, and I was pulling this up, looking at it. No. But this week, sure. Okay, against at Arizona. Okay, fine. And coming off arguably his best game with the highest attempts and highest yards, sure. I would be actively trying to trade him for whatever I can get. And especially I would be trying to Trojan horse them in a package deal. I wouldn't be trying to do any kind of one-ups for Justin Herbert at his current value, but I would 100% be trying to, Trojan horse him in a deal and maybe get back a feasible starting quarterback. Matt Stafford, honestly, I would take for the rest of the season over Herbert and what I'm looking at here. Because, yeah, Arizona, but then you get New Orleans. Their defense is still decent. At Cleveland, again, their offense might suck, but their defense is still okay. And then Tennessee, Cincinnati, Baltimore, at Atlanta, at Kansas City, Tampa Bay. And then in your week 16 and 17, you get Denver and New England. Why does that sound like it sucks so much? So for this year in Superflex, I would actively be trying to get out of any Justin Herbert shares that I was tricked into this year.
JT, let's just say you have Herbert on your team. Somebody sends you Derek Carr for Justin Herbert, then you just start. Do you make that trade?
No, I'm not trading Herbert, but I also have Herbert starting on a touch of Superflex teams, and you know what? Those teams, their record sucks. So it's my teams. I'm having to play them, and it's not been pretty. It's just not. You're just not getting fantasy production out of Herbert. In redraft, I maybe make the trade. I'm not moving off Herbert in Dynasty. He's still young. I think this team is going to add pieces over the next couple of years. I'm not bailing on Herbert. If I could go get him, I would still actively try to get him, as I think the price has fallen for him.
Dynasty, okay, but let me give you a couple names here in redraft, and let me know if you would straight up trade Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, or Justin Herbert right now.
I'm going Rodgers.
Yeah, okay. How about Geno Smith?
Oh, fuck.
I'm
going
Geno.
On the show trip later, but
Geno is like easy, right? What about Trevor Lawrence, who's had his own struggles?
I probably go Lawrence over Herbert because I just think they're going to throw the ball a ton. They're going to be down. They're suck, but they're going to be down and they're going to throw. So the metrics might be bad and the QBR might be bad, but he's going to put up some yards and some touchdowns.
Yeah, the Chargers run the ball and they take up the clock, stuff like that. Where the difference with the Jaguars is they're always behind. Trevor Lawrence sucks because they're down by 21 points and they just send the dogs on every play. Trevor Lawrence is running for his life on every play, but he's got to throw the ball. So I'm going Trevor.
Danny Dimes, last one. Danny Dimes or Justin Herbert?
I'm going to go Danny Dimes, especially with that addition. He looks okay even without neighbors on the field. So I'm okay going Danny Dimes. And that hurts to say
I'd probably take Dimes just in a redraft for this year because of the rushing. He's got the rushing upside. He's got the rushing upside a little bit. And the Giants have been a little they've been better than I thought they would be. I thought they would be an absolute dumpster fire, and they've actually been competitive. So I probably would go Dimes too. It hurts. Because I like Justin Herbert so much.
That's what I mean by, is he startable in Superflex? Like, do you have any of those guys?
You're starting him. I think you're starting him if you have to. Literally, if you have to start him, you're starting him. But if you have any other options, I think you're going other options.
Yes. Okay. JT, Chiefs. Is Kareem Hunt the key to the Chiefs Super Bowl run that they really needed in this offense?
I think they can do all kinds of stuff with running backs. I think Carson Steele was the same thing. I know Hunt played good the other day. I think the key to them is Mahomes. They got to have a passing game. I think Juju is more important. If Juju can play well, they can continue to work Worthy in. Keep going with Kelsey. Even though he hasn't had a great year, he's still a guy that's going to make plays when they need it. So I don't think Hunt's the total key. I think they can make it work with a lot of different running backs. I just think they got to have the passing game going, and I think that's what matters. That and the defense is playing real well right now for the Chiefs.
Quick question real fast from Bug Killer. In redraft, do you trade CeeDee Lamb away to get Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and Nick Chubb? I'm keeping CeeDee. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm keeping CeeDee.
Yeah, my team would have to be so bad. Like, I would have to be starting like complete backups. Like, if Emmanuel Wilson is my legitimate RB2, I'm really just like picking up complete scraps. And even then, I don't know. I think you would just end up downgrading your team. And it's like you're gonna. Yeah, I don't know. I would.
I think you're right. You'd have to be playing be just utterly thin and be like, I need these three guys to start every week for me to even make that close. I think you got to go CD. I think you got to go CD there.
We got a new mailman Chris sighting right now. Trey Lance and Desmond Ridder will they ever be a thing?
No,
probably not.
They're fetch. They're going to be a thing as much as Jalen Warren in an Arthur Smith offense.
Thanks for checking in, new mailman Chris Joel Smith. Chris wanted to go out last week, and it's one week I had stuff going on Sundays where I couldn't hang out with the boys. So I'll make it up to you, Chris. We'll be drinking in my garage soon. Don't worry about that, buddy.
Hey, John, I know it's coming up. We got one more trade just went down as the NFL is looking like the NBA here all of a sudden getting crazy. Cardinals just traded for Hassan Reddick, and they got my boy D-Rob coming back off the IR from Mizzou, the rookie. Those two guys, it says Cardinals D hopefully will look better soon. Hopefully, the Cardinals defense has been terrible. They still need a lot of pieces, but adding those two guys to help the rushing pass rush, I think would be huge for Arizona. So yeah, made the trade for Reddick, and then I love DeMarcus Robinson. You know that, John. I talked about him all the time.
All the time.
He's a stud. Moved from the inside to the outside end and was awesome at Mizzou last year. Super underrated guy. I think when he gets back in there, it'll be nice to see those two guys. Probably we'll talk about those guys on the IDP show later on tomorrow night
On Fantasy and Frames.
On Fantasy and Frames.
Funny, Reddit coming full circle.
Another question is Michael Carter droppable. I don't know. I still like Michael Carter. I think he's just in a bad situation right now. I mean, here's the answer to that question. The magic answer to that question is, how deep are your rosters? Do you have room for Michael Carter? If not, then you don't. He's one of those guys you could drop and nobody else is going to pick him up probably. So if you think Michael Carter can go somewhere else and be something else, I tried trading for a couple times for Chris for Michael Carter. He said no before. Now I'm just gonna wait for Chris to drop him. You gave away you played your hand, Chris. I'm gonna wait for you to drop Michael Carter and he'll be on my team. So thank you very much. But it's if you have 20 man rosters, he's droppable. 25 is questionable. 30 keepable. So that's the way I look at it.
I always say droppable for who? Like it's who are you going to pick up to replace Michael Carter? And if that name is some complete jabroni off practice squad that probably, doesn't see the field any more than Carter, then no.
Okay,
John, and I just want to make a real quick, because I didn't make it real clear when I said that about the Hassan Reddick. He hasn't officially been traded to the Cardinals. He was talking about like, if he gets traded to the Cardinals, would that help out? I'm like, yes, that would be great. That would be a nice move for them. There's no official word on that. Just wanted to say that, that was Spencer wishing that happens. And I'm like, yeah, I think that could be a definitely a landing spot for him. But I have not seen anything official on that yet.
Okay. So let me ask a question about Michael Carter. Would you drop Michael Carter to pick up Ryan Flournoy from the Cowboys in a full PPR?
Yes. Full PPR, yes.
Yeah, I would do the same thing. So, all right, cool. All right, next one. Where do we leave off here? The Chiefs, the Colts. Jack, should the Colts just ride with Flacco until next season?
I think this presents an interesting dichotomy that we run into in the NFL of teams, the whole PR is we're always just doing whatever we can to win football games, right? If that were true, Joe Flacco would be starting for the rest of the season. It wouldn't even be a question. Anthony Richardson is so clearly an inferior quarterback in every possible aspect of the game except for his physical intangibles and being able to run the football.
And passing. And passing.
Oh, I guess, yeah, if you're – I actually, even just in terms of like who can throw a 70-yard bomb, Flacco's got a huge arm. That's always been his thing. It's like, it's not even like it's not like Flacco is Chad Pennington out here just getting it done purely on his accuracy. Like the dude can sling. So I don't even think you can argue like, oh, well, Anthony Richardson's just got such a big arm. Like, again, his physical intangibles are clearly a lot better and he's younger. And so he's their future and they feel like they're stuck starting him because of that. But in every conceivable aspect of quarterbacking a team, Joe Flacco is far superior than Anthony Richardson right now. Richardson should be redshirting behind Flacco. Like, in theory, yes. Do I think the Colts are going to do that? No.
So if I had a guy who had season tickets to the Colts, I'd probably ask him, like, what do you think would happen here? Should they sit A-Rod, Anthony Richardson, the rest of the season? Or should they go with Joe, just keep riding with Joe Flacco? JT, you are a Colts season ticket holder. What a coincidence.
This one's tough because I really want to see AR and he needs to grow. But I mean, Jack's right. I mean, for all my Flacco hate for him being on the Ravens for all those years, I just absolutely could not stand Joe Flacco. The guy is pretty freaking good, and he's still got some game left in him. He didn't play great last week. Played much better the week before. But if you were just going like the straight, I'm just trying to win games right now, I think you're right. I think Flacco is probably the right call. It's like the difference between him and Minshew last year. Like Minshew could win you games. He would be in the mix, but I think Flacco is clearly, he's just a better NFL QB right now. He just knows the game. He's been around. He can work it. They've got good wide receivers. I think Flacco's your guy. I just don't think the Colts I don't think the Colts want to sit Anthony Richardson. And the problem, too, is he's played so little in his career that's like you need to get him every rep you can get him because you know that there's going to be a learning curve before he actually gets to where he's really good enough to play in the NFL. Because right now, let's be honest, he probably shouldn't be starting in the league. He shouldn't be. But how do you get him prepared to start in the league if he never plays and he never gets any games in? So I think that's where the Colts are really at a struggle spot is like, man, we know he needs the reps, but do we keep playing him? And I think that's why last week when he was like a little banged up, I think they thought, dude, we can win this game without him. And I think they were like, he's kind of banged up. Let's go with Flacco.
My counterpart, though, is Jordan Love. It's like you could argue, well, how did Jordan Love get so good? Because he got to redshirt for 2 years behind a veteran quarterback. Like Flacco is not as good as Aaron Rodgers, but he is just as much a veteran presence, and his awareness of the game at this point in their careers is almost just, it's basically the same as like Flacco. I don't think knows the game less than Aaron Rodgers at age 39. So that's the argument is like, he should have redshirted last year and this year, and the Colts just felt like they had to rush him because last year it was Minshew and this year it was Flacco, and they just really, frankly, just weren't prepared.
I tell you what you do is you give Richardson all the practice reps and you let Flacco play on Sundays until you see progress in your team facility. Is my answer for that question.
I think if Flacco would have been on the team last year and ready to roll when he got hurt, I think you would have seen a different approach this year. You know what I mean? Because I think they would have made the playoffs first off, because they almost made it with Minshew. And why I'm a Minshew guy and I love Minshew mania. He's just a fun dude. Flacco's a much better QB, obviously, than Minshew is. So I think if that would have happened last year with Flacco on the team and go, okay, great situation. Flacco can learn from him. But he was going against Minshew, who was a guy who was obviously wanting to start, trying to win a starting job. Totally different situation than the veteran that Flacco is, and a guy that, knows he's not going to be around forever. So I think if that would have been the situation last year, I think they would have gone into this year knowing, hey, we're probably going to start Joe and we're going to give him another year to learn behind him because he's learned a lot last year. But I think with, them bringing him in late kind of just threw everything off. But I think you can see a lot of people think the Colts have a better chance to win whenever Flacco's named the starter because just watch the betting lines. I mean, like the second they say Flacco's the starter, all the wide receiver lines go up.
Yep.
The Colts line down. Everybody's like favors the Colts. So you could tell that everybody thinks that they have a better shot winning with Flacco.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of both chime in here. How do the Cowboys get back on track for this season? JT, I'll start with you.
I don't know. That's why I paused. I'm not sure how they get back track. I have to tell you, when the season started, I was one of the few people that was like, I don't think the Cowboys make the playoffs. And people thought it was crazy. But I was like, I just don't like the makeup of this team. It was Dak to CeeDee, and that's it. And then the defense is okay. But I thought losing Quinn would kill them. I just didn't think they would be as good without him. They haven't been. I think this Cowboys team is a typical overrated Cowboys team. I'm not sure they can get it back together. The NFC is not great, so there's definitely a way they can sneak into the playoffs still. But man, I tell you, NFC North is coming, and if you can get Tampa and one other team in the South to put some wins together, and with the Commanders being better than we thought they'd be, I think the Cowboys are legit in trouble. I think there's a good chance they might miss the playoffs. And I tell you what, I mean, I don't know how many people stayed up late and watched that Cowboys-Steelers game. Cowboys should not have won that game. Steelers should have won that game. They were in control a majority of the game. Even though they didn't dominate on the scoreboard, they were winning that game, the whole game, till the last play. I mean, literally till the last play of the game. So, I mean, I think this Cowboys team is in big trouble, and I don't see how they fix it this year.
I don't either. I mean, I was one of the other few that was predicting their downfall along with you. And, I think last year they overperformed to expectation. And I predicted that this year they would regress a little bit and maybe even fall under expectations. The Cowboys just traditionally have always been a very inconsistent organization where very much they will flip-flop year to year of we're bad, we're good, we're bad, we're good, kind of regardless of how the roster goes. But at this point, this may have been the worst offseason in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, at this point, Jerry Jones looks like a geriatric, dementia-ridden patient running around the hallways of the Cowboys organization, just actively ruining their team. And it's like everybody else is just doing whatever they can to stop him from tanking what they're trying to do. And him basically coming out and saying, like, there is no other GM that could negotiate the contracts that I've negotiated. And just like they've mismanaged every possible aspect of the offseason, whether it was re-signing their own players, bringing in free agents, drafting, or anything that they could have possibly done to improve this team. And like you said, they lost a defensive coordinator. It was like, this team just actively got worse across the board, did absolutely nothing to improve in any facet of the game, and expected to walk back into this season with Mike McCarthy and Schottenheimer and no running game to account for, with bringing back Ezekiel Elliott, which was the most hilarious trope of the offseason. And they're getting their comeuppance. I think they are arguably the worst team in this division, and at best they are, the third best above the Giants. Like, I think it's very clear that the Commanders and Eagles are much better than them, and that's the Eagles having their own struggles and the Commanders having a rookie quarterback.
This is what Jerry Jones gets for playing stupid games all offseason with money, messing with these guys' wallets, giving the team a bad attitude. Like, the locker room's got to be ready to just throw Jerry Jones off the side of the building at this point in time. Who's the next guy that needs a contract? Are they going to have to beg Jerry Jones to wait for the last minute till they get anything signed? I'm kind of glad this is happening. I hope he just finally realizes that he can't do what he his major plan or his master plan, and it's not working. He needs to turn the reins over to somebody else. But this is a great wake-up call for Jerry Jones, for someone who absolutely needs it to be a wake-up call too. So
it's a crazy correlation, but he is basically late stages Vince McMahon, where Vince McMahon, if you're a fan of pro wrestling and WWE, was like actively ruining the product because he just didn't get it anymore. He was past his prime, and he was still involving himself in the day-to-day creative, even at such a level that he just wasn't like ever allowing other people to do their job. And that is what Jerry Jones does and exists in his organization as a Vince McMahon-esque figure where you can never say no to him. And because of that, it's actively ruining the franchise.
I think that's a absolute great correlation. And I will say, like, I think this Cowboys franchise is done until Jerry Jones is gone. Like, I don't think there's any way to come back. Just like Jack said, I don't think he's ever going to relinquish any control. He's never going to go, I'll hire a GM and let them do it. He's just stuck like, I'm doing this till the end of time. And at this point, we've seen he can't do it anymore. He's lost control. He still has control of the team, but that's the problem, is he has control and he's lost it. I think Dallas is in for a long couple of years, as long as Jerry stays in control of everything.
Absolutely. JT, Cowboys. How does this Dolphins. Will Jalen Wright be the new centerpiece of this offense when Tua comes back?
Jalen Wright's working his way in. I mean, the injuries at the running back spot. Again, if anybody's healthy, I like the way the running backs can play in this team, but the Dolphins have to get Tua back. I mean, I know there's some other important players to their teams, but Tua, as we've seen, might be one of the most important players to a team. Like, this offense has absolutely just been horrible. And we know Mike McDaniel can coach. I mean, we've seen it. He's a good offensive mind. He's a good coach. They've been absolutely terrible without Tua. They got to get Tua back for everybody's fantasy purposes. Like, we have to have him back, because whether you like Tua or not, everybody else on this team is suffering big time without him.
Oh, agreed, 100%. And I'm not a Tua fan, but I can agree with that. Was that just shit?
You can. That's all right, John. You jump around here.
Eagles. Are the Eagles, JT, I'm going to go with you again. Are the Eagles just paper champions?
Man, I feel like they should be better than they are. I think this team is going to have a decent record again, but man, the late season collapse like last year, I've not seen that. That's not something that could happen again this year. The defense, man, the talent is there. The names are there, but they just are not good. The defense just is not good. I don't know what it is, why they can't get it together. This Eagles team, man, they feel like another first round exit to me. I feel like they make the playoffs,
Yes.
they get in, and if they get a home game, they get upset, or they go on the road and they're screwed going on the road against somebody. This team, it feels like an early out again to me.
We got our trade question here. Cap for life, gentlemen. It's got to offer Devontae Adams for Devonta Smith for Devontae Adams. Do I pull the trigger? I want Devonta Smith in that situation.
Me too.
Even with Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback in New York.
I third that.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question there, Cap for life. Next one, Jack, Falcons. Should you trade or hold Bijan?
Absolute hold. I'm very much the Bijan guy. I thought he had the potential to finish RB1. I've been incredibly disappointed by how the coaching staff has used him, specifically because it's like all of the Rams coaching staff from last year. I'm like, he is just Kyron Williams plus. Why are you not using him the same way? And I don't know if it's just because he's been dealing with kind of injuries or whatever, but he's coming off his best game of the season. He's actually also coming off his lowest snap percentage of the season, only 56%, but he had 18 opportunities and the 2 touchdowns. Part of the problem was definitely the schedule. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Kansas City, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay with Vita Vea. Like, those are some pretty strong run defenses. And now he gets Carolina, Seattle, Tampa again, but then Dallas, who we've seen people are running all over, New Orleans, and then Denver. And in the playoffs, he gets Vegas, Giants, and Commanders. So really juicy playoff schedule, really strong schedule for the next little while. So you're definitely wanting to hold on Bijan Robinson.
I just traded 2 late firsts for Bijan and 2 early thirds. So
Yeah,
that was my
I like that one. Trade. John, we got a couple more trade questions in here. So do I deal Dalton Schultz, Achane, and Darnold for Burrow and Madison?
My heart says no, but my head says maybe.
It's like my dynasty. If you're going dynasty here, my dynasty head says you got to take Burrow. He's like the guy that's got the most value, especially if it's a super flex league. If it's a 1 QB league, that changes it a bit for me because I think a chain in there, and I like Darnold. Me and John are the one I want to ask Jack because me and John are the biggest Darnold homers ever. We both love Darnold.
I think A-Chain is actually the most valuable piece, and the problem is just the lack of Tua in terms of dynasty. Mm-hmm. But in a redraft, like, can you afford to hold A-Chain anymore if you're just like, again, this is like, are you 2-4 and you need to win now? Or are you 6-0? Because if you're 6-0, there's no way I'm doing this deal. I think Darnold is close enough to Burrow that it's a huge downgrade from A-Chain to Madison, even with the quarterback situation. So I think I hold A-Chain here.
Yeah, I'm on the A-Chain Darnold side.
We got a quick defensive question here. We don't get these very often. Commanders, Bengals, or Eagles defense? If I'm going just 1 week, if I just need 1 week, I'm probably playing the Bengals because the Browns offense has been terrible. Now, the Bengals defense has been bad this year. They've been bad. But going against the Browns, I'm probably playing the Bengals this week. If I'm going forward for the rest of the year, I mean, Commanders are at home against the Panthers this week, so that's not a bad one either. Oh, they've been in high-scoring games. I'm probably, for the season, oh, man, this is bad, but I'm probably taking the Commanders defense, even though I think all 3 of these defenses are not great. It's a 1 week for me. I'm probably going Bengals. I would go Bengals, Commanders, then Eagles, that order.
Right. Truth. All right.
We got one more, John. We're getting all kinds of trade questions today. We're getting through it. So would you trade Chase Brown and Michael Pittman for Devontae Adams? Do you think that would be a good trade or not? I like Chase and Pittman. I like Chase and Pittman, but I think also I have a feeling Pittman's going to start cranking it up a little more than he has been early on, especially if Flacco stays in there. I think Pittman's going to start getting a lot more targets. And I like Chase Brown. I said all year I thought he should have been the starter over Moss, and I think every week he gets a little bit more ahead of Moss and taking that job over. So I like Chase, especially depending on your running back situation, man, I don't want to get rid of any running backs this year if they're healthy, because it's ugly out there right now.
With a good quarterback, throwing a Pittman and Chase Brown, I don't think there's that big of a downgrade between Pittman and Adams. So I'll take the Chase Brown. Pittman side.
Adams isn't just gonna walk in off the street.
Exactly.
Like, it's gonna take a couple weeks to at least get up to speed with the playbook and everything. Like, I know he's got the connection with Rodgers and the Nathaniel Hackett, so maybe it only takes a week or two, but still, like, my only problem is I do think Anthony Richardson's going to get more starts, and I think that heavily downgrades Michael Pittman. Where when Flacco's in, I don't think there's much difference from Adams to Michael Pittman, but when A-Rich is in, there's a big difference. So, but I think Chase Brown is the one Chase Brown is just too nice to give up right now.
Yes, agreed. Jack, 49ers. What is this team's weakness?
I think the defense is overrated. That's going to be the first thing. I think, the defensive line especially has struggled to get to the quarterback. Bosa specifically just continuing to struggle with injuries. And it just seems like he kind of disappears sometimes. And then I think, obviously, besides injuries, what is going on with Brandon Ayuk? This man complained and just seemed like he was going to be off the team, and then finally got his money, and he has had one good game this whole season. He's been myopic, to say the least. I don't know exactly if it's just because, CMC is that good that he really makes the rest of the team go, because you have to account for CMC in a way that even the other running backs, like, you're just trying to stop the run game versus an absolute backbreaker. But yeah, I think obviously the running back injuries is one, the defense being underperforming is two, and then I would say Brandon Ayuk is three.
That's fair. Yeah, I get it. There's not many weaknesses, but I mean, yeah, those are probably the glaring ones. So, Giants, JT, is Daniel Jones underrated?
I don't know if he's underrated. I think he's maybe properly rated. I don't think he's quite as bad as everybody was ripping him coming into the year and just basically, throwing him to the wolves. But I think he is what he is. I think we know at this point, he's an okay quarterback. He's gonna be decent. Is he gonna be a killer? Is he gonna win? I mean, they lucked into the playoffs that one year. I think when they did it, I thought they really lucked in. I was like, man, they're going to end up paying him, and they shouldn't. And I just think he's very okay. Now, his stats look better this year because the passing stats in the league this year are down all around. They haven't been great. But fantasy purposes, I think he's slightly underrated for fantasy. I think he's actually giving you better production than you actually probably expected if you had him on your team.
Yeah. I agree. JT, I got these messed up again. JT, will go with you. Jaguars, is it coaching, Trevor, or the team on the field that's causing this collapse?
I'm not sure what's going on here. I thought Doug Peterson was going to be a huge upgrade. He looked like a huge upgrade at first, and this team just looks like a disaster. I know, John, me and you are both big T-Law guys. I thought this was going to be a breakout year for him. I didn't think the Jags were going to be very good, but I thought he was going to put up big numbers because they weren't going to be good, and he was going to carry them. Man, this is a toughie. It's starting to feel like at some point, is this a Trevor Lawrence has to get out of Jacksonville to actually show how good he can be? But would they even let go of him?
They just signed him a long-term contract.
I know they just signed a huge deal. It's hard to see they get rid of him. And again, he's not playing well. So it's like, does that kill his trade value? And then even if they would trade him, because I'm not sure they would, but something's not right here. I know the defense isn't very good. That's definitely a problem. I like BTJ a lot. I thought this would be the hookup, him and T-Law. I'm banking it. I've got a ton of Dynasty leagues. that is like all T-Law, all Brian Thomas. I'm like, was like, this is going to be like my carry me to championships, stack for the next couple of years. And now I'm nervous as can be. I don't know what it is, man, but T-Law doesn't look right. He doesn't look great. The O-line's been bad. He's getting beat up. And it just, at this point, it feels like a meltdown all around from everybody. I think the coaching staff is just, I think they've lost sight of what they were trying to do. They had no clue, and it's trickling down to the players.
If Jacksonville loses to New England this weekend, did they just cut the coach while they're still in New England, while they're still in London, or what?
Oh, they should.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, because I actually, we were talking about streaming defenses before. I have the Jags this week as one of my favorite streaming defenses, because if you can't take on a rookie in London, which is your home base, like affectionately speaking, and you've been there for 2 weeks and they're having to travel there, I mean, I think Peterson honestly should have already been fired.
Yes.
But I mean, I understand why the NFL teams are hesitant to do that in season, because it usually doesn't work out, except for that first game after the coach has been fired. But I do think it's all three. Like, I do think it is Trevor Lawrence. The expectations that were put upon him to be an Andrew Luck-esque figure and like the second coming of football Jesus. I think, obviously that was higher than his capabilities potentially. And then I look at the team on the field and kind of the way that these players are used. And then I look at the coaching and I'm like, yeah, I think it's just a bad fit for all of them.
I think there's a lot of old coaches in this league that people have just figured out, and they don't belong here anymore. They need to get some young player with a young coach who's one of the better college coaches that is looking for promotion right now, that can come up here and just breathe some life into the Jaguars, like something that just shake the whole thing up and go. I mean, JT, who's the best college coach right now you think is going to be ready for promotion, who might end up at Jacksonville?
It'd be interesting to see who. I mean, obviously Alabama just got Daver. He looked really good at Washington, things he was doing there. I think Lemming, the Oregon coach, is going to be high on a lot of guys' lists. But I think you're right. You just watch this Jags offense. There is no creativity. Like, they're not running any motions. It's like everything feels like it's straight set up, go, like we're running a 1998 offense.
Right.
I don't know, man. I don't like what they're doing on offense. I don't think they're putting in I don't think they're putting T-Law in a lot of spaces that are good for him. There's not a lot of good spots for him. They definitely need a change. Shad Khan's he's gonna have to make a move. I thought Doug Peterson was a nice hire originally. I feel like they've already kind of gotten everything they can get out of him. It's time they need to figure out like a McDaniel style move where they're hiring a guy like him that can come in and kind of reinvent that offense, because the offense is just so dull right now for them.
Yeah, 100%. Jack, two-part question here. How much did the Jets just improve by getting Devontae Adams, and how much did it hurt Garrett Wilson?
The Jets, I think, obviously get better with this move, because anytime you bring in a former All-Pro wide receiver, I mean, even if Aaron Rodgers was not on this team, that would just be further depth and, value for an NFL team at the wide receiver position that they're, in theory, trying to make a run. I think obviously you add in the connection with Rodgers and specifically the OC Hackett, even though he might not be necessarily calling the plays anymore. It's still going to be a lot of the same stuff that they were running in Green Bay, because that's what Aaron is comfortable with, and that's why essentially they're bringing in Devontae Adams. I don't know that it necessarily hurts Garrett Wilson. I actually think it might even potentially help him, because I think Mike Williams gets erased. I think this was they were trading Devontae Adams to replace Mike Williams, and I think Alan Lazard will still see a role, but obviously won't be the wide receiver 8 for the rest of the fantasy season going forward. I really think that Garrett Wilson obviously isn't going to ever see 22 targets in a game again, but he shouldn't see 22 targets in a game in general. I do think as a clear delineated wide receiver 2, where you are going to have to pay attention to Devontae and potentially seeing like some better matchups even, I think Garrett Wilson's still going to be viable for fantasy. I might even throw out some offers to some panicky owners just to kind of see what the price is on Garrett Wilson right now. Because I think he's going to be okay. And I do think this is good overall for the Jets.
It's a good idea. I didn't even think about that, but it's a good idea. Mike Williams, I think the Jets already said we're trading him. He's on a trade block already to get him off our team kind of thing. So
yeah,
he wasn't a good fit there anyway. So it is what it is. JT Lions. Did we lose Sam Laporta as a top fantasy tight end option because of Jameson Williams' emergence?
I think Laporta, I'm not giving up on Laporta yet. Again, he had a real nice rookie year, but he's still a young guy. There's just so many good players on the Lions team. They're doing so many different things with Montgomery and with Gibbs. And then Jameis Williams is just, with him, his emergence is just kind of taken away a little bit of Laporta. He's been banged up too. He hasn't been fully healthy yet. I'm not moving him. If somebody else is worried about him, I'll go trade for him for sure. It's just a little rough, just right now for him. And it is frustrating because especially if you're in a redraft league, you probably spent a pretty decent amount of draft capital taking him. You probably took him pretty early. So he is hurting there. I'm not for long-term dynasty. I still like Laporta. I still think he's going to have a really good career. I think he's a really good player. Things are just not kind of working out his way as far as this year for fantasy.
Truth. Absolutely true. I'm worried about him, but at the same time, he still gets good big plays, and this is a great offense. He might be a little bit more boom and bust than he was before, but he's still a good option. Jack, Packers. Is this wide receiver core going to be a nightmare forever, just back and forth, nobody ever being like over 20% kind of receiving kind of thing? Yeah, it is, right?
That's basically, I've said this before, is the Green Bay Packers wide receivers, yeah, you can take your shot on the guy that you like, but this is one of the teams where I love to draft the quarterback because they are the sum of all parts, but you never know which wide receiver it's going to be. And it's not even just the wide receivers. It's like you never know, honestly, what tight end it's going to be, what running back it's going to be, just because LaFleur does like to use multiple running backs. Like, you would expect Josh Jacobs to just get all the work in the world, but every time you look up, Emmanuel Wilson's getting 7 for 45. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. Kraft has kind of started to emerge as the better wide receiver option, but Musgrave is still very viable. And all the wide receivers are basically the same age with similar draft capital, except for Christian Watson, who, if he could ever stay healthy, would be essentially the wide receiver 1 based on talent and draft capital. But again, best ability is availability. He's never available. And so then it goes to Jaden Reed, it seems like, is the second option. And then everybody else just kind of mixes in. But now Reed is popping up questionable. Wicks is also dealing with an injury. He had to leave the game. So it's just like, they're all like 24-year-old wide receivers. Dobbs will pop up every now and again. It's just, it is a bunch of wide receiver 2s essentially that all together kind of aggregate as like a really good wide receiving core for a young quarterback. But it's not, you don't have a clear opportunity and target leader like you do in other teams with like an AJ Brown or something like that.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a nightmare. If they need a new training staff in facility there to get these guys hydrated and stretched out before the games. I'm not sure.
Did you guys hear the trope of like Christian Watson was like working out one leg extra hard or something to like even out his hamstring so that he wouldn't get injured again? And lo and behold.
Is his newest injury a hamstring again?
I don't know if it was a hamstring that he had.
The last one was his ankle.
Okay,
this last one, he was coming back from the ankle, but the hamstrings have been nonstop problems for him.
Yeah. JT, Panthers, is Jonathan Brooks going to make an impact this season for the redraft people?
I took him in a couple redraft leagues, and I hate to say it, I think not. I think Jonathan Brooks, I think you're done. If you got Jonathan Brooks, if you have IR spots, you can just hold him on the IR and wait. That's probably your best bet. But Chuba is the guy that they love him. He's been really solid. He's 200, 100-yard games and 2 90-yard games in his last 4. So, I mean, they're giving him the ball. He's been productive. It's not like he's out there being, Trey Sermon running for 1.6 yards a carry. Like, he's been good, and they're not good. I mean, they're 1-5. They're one of the 3 worst teams in the league. They're fighting for the number 1 pick. There's no reason to rush back Jonathan Brooks this year. If anything, I think they play him a little bit as the year gets to the end of the year, just to kind of work him in and get him in the system. But if you think Jonathan Brooks is coming back and getting 15 to 20 carries in any game this year, I think I would bet against that unless something happens to Chuba. But even then, I mean, this is a team playing for the future. I mean, obviously they're playing a 30-something-year-old quarterback, trying to figure out what they're doing with Bryce Young. If they end up getting the number 1 overall pick again, do they, I hate to say it, do they move on from Bryce Young and do the whole Arizona Cardinals deal where they took Josh Rosen and realized, this is not what we want to do, and they turn around to Kyler Murray right after it? Maybe that's what they do. But this team has got nothing to play for this year. There's no reason to rush him back from that injury. Go into next year liking him and Chuba both. I think if you're sitting on a team where you don't have an IR spot and you're holding on to Brooks, if I need some help in these bye weeks, I'm probably dropping him.
Yeah. Jack, Patriots, how does Drake May look to you so far?
I mean, he looked a lot better than I thought he would, just given, again, I'm looking at the system and the weapons that he has available to him and his likelihood of success in the New England Patriots offense right now. And I had very minimal expectations. So even though he made mistakes, coming out and dropping 20 for 243 and 3, I am definitely not going to turn my nose up at that. However, I am now reticent and pulling back on the idea that you should pick him up in any single quarterback leagues, because I'm looking at this schedule now. Yeah, at Jacksonville this week, and then the Jets, the Titans, the Bears, the Rams, and the Dolphins. Like, 4 of those are really good defenses. I think this is going to be very telling on if Drake May can just survive this season and look like he did against Houston, essentially. I think he is a viable starting quarterback for the rest of his career. Like, I think he has a 7 to 10 year career if he can just survive this season. If he's able to do that, is the big question. But I had him ranked like as the 3rd best rookie quarterback behind Caleb and Jaden Daniels. But I really didn't expect, again, him to look as good in this offense. Like, I would have been just fine if he had 202 and a couple interceptions. I would have been impressed. But I thought he was, like, slinging it. He also ran 5 times for 38 yards, averaged 7 yards a clip. So he has some athleticism, some size. He's got an arm on him. I think there's a future there.
Yes. Agreed. All right. We got 10 minutes to do 10 teams. So here we go with the speed race here. Where are we at? Just JT, Raiders. How long will it be until the Raiders are NFL relevant again? And are there any fantasy options on this team besides Brock Powers?
Yeah, they're not going to be relevant for a while. This team needs so much help. The only other guy I'm even got my eye on, it's more dynasty than it would be in a redraft, unless you're in like a super deep league, is Trey Tucker. He's probably the only other guy I've got my eye on for the Raiders. Bowers is it. This team needs a full rebuild. I think I don't want any part of them outside of Bowers right now.
Jack, Rams, can they survive this season with all these injuries?
Survive, yes. Thrive, no. They're in too tough of a division. They're already 1-4. Even though San Fran and Seattle are only 3-3, I just don't see them having enough juice on defense. Even if they get Cooper Kupp back and eventually Puka Nacua back, I don't foresee them making the playoffs. So can they survive? Yes. Can they still be fantasy relevant? Sure. Can they win games and make the playoffs? No.
JT, Ravens. Is Lamar, King Henry, and Zay the only startable options on this team?
Yeah, I think Mark Andrews is going to continue to work his way in. Obviously, everybody jumped on the Isaiah Likely early on, and then we've seen him just kind of like fade and not do a whole lot. This team was going to pound the rock, man. Deep leagues, Justice Hill. I've played Justice Hill in some redraft leagues where I'm like, don't have a lot of other. I kind of went Derrick Henry or somebody early in my draft, and then I just avoided running back altogether. And so Justice Hill's actually not a bad player, RB2, if you kind of went 0 RB in your drafts. I was hoping it would be Rasheen Ali, but he got on the IR right off the bat, and it's kind of been just Hill. So Hill's the other playable guy. Beyond that, the only other guy I've played on this team is Bateman, and is in a league where I like just don't have any better option. And every time I put him in the lineup, I hate myself for it. So I would not do it unless you absolutely have to.
Jack, Saints, are you keeping or trading Chris Olave? And let me ask you this. For the 106, are you keeping Olave?
Oh, I said I was set on keeping him, and you said the 106. If I knew it was the 106, I would trade Olave. I don't think there's a quarterback coming in next year that just saves Olave's value. I would take the 106. I think it's a deep draft next year too.
108.
106 was kind of the cutoff because I felt like anything past that was not enough value. Where it's like you're just selling low now. I think 106 you're getting appropriate value.
All right, good. JT Seahawks. When does Geno turn into a pumpkin again?
Man, it's like I just keep going as he got one more year left before he kind of falls apart. Does he got one more year left before he's just got so much talent around him that he looks pretty good. You know me, I'm a Sam Howell guy. I would love to see Sam Howell get a shot on this team. I don't know if that even happens. I don't know if they do decide to finally move on for Geno, if they're going to draft a QB. I wouldn't be surprised if Howell never got a shot. I think you got at least this season and probably next year for Geno, because I think this team has got enough to make the playoffs. I think you got at least this year and next year, but then you go in any farther than that, you got Geno at like 35, 36. We know he kind of was a late bloomer, and guys have been able to play a little bit later. I have a hard time believing that Geno is going to be playing at a super high level beyond the next 2 years.
Jack, Steelers. Is this a smart move moving on from Justin Fields?
In the words of Doug Peterson, I'm pissed off, Angelo. Justin Fields is 4-2. What are we doing? Why? Russell Wilson is terrible. Nobody likes him. This is such a stupid move. This is the ultimate Jeff Fisher, I want to finish 500 move.
Yeah,
I can't agree more. I was just on a show before this show this morning, and we talked about this, and I went on a rant for way longer than I was supposed to, and I won't do it here. But there's just absolutely no freaking reason that you move on from Justin Fields right now.
As a fan, objectionably, like, I'm pissed off just as a regular football fan. Don't even start me on fantasy.
Yeah, there's no reason to go to Russ here. Justin Fields is 4-2. This team is moving in the right direction. He's making plays.
First time this season. Oh, let's change the quarterback.
It just makes no sense to me. If you told me, oh well, Russ is going to come in and do this, and this better than Justin Fields, I'd be like, okay, but I don't think there's anything that Russ is going to come in and do better than Fields. I really don't.
Right. JT, Texans. Is this the week to sell Joe Mixon with a real tough schedule coming up?
Oh, if you could get something for him, I would. I don't have a lot of Joe. I'm actually surprised how well he got off to a good start this year. I was like, sell, because he got off to such a great start. I think he is going to be usable the rest of the year because I think this Texans team is good. I just don't know how long that's going to be. This really felt like a 1 year. They're going to trade him, use him this year, and then next year, if they had a better option, they'd move on. So if I can sell him for something decent, especially if I got Mixon on a team that's a losing team, I'm selling him if I can.
Yeah, Jack, Titans. How long is Will Levis's leash?
Longer than I thought, because I would have benched him coming out of the bye week. I would have already had I hate Mason Rudolph, and as a Steelers fan, I double hate Mason Rudolph. But I would still be starting him over Will Levis. That should tell you how long his leash is.
Yeah, JT, Vikings. Does Aaron Jones lose his feature back role with this injury?
I think as long as Jones, whenever he's healthy, I think Jones is the guy for them. At least for this year. I think they had every intention of bringing him in and just using him as much as possible. And then they can always get rid of him. They're not paying him a ton of money. He's easily to get out of his contract. I think Aaron Jones is the guy as long as he's healthy. And we've seen it in his career. He can be hurt and come back and play really well. Be hurt, come back, play really well. That's what he does.
He's good. He's good. Jack, last question. It's a Washington football team, but it's a comparison here. Would you rather, if you're starting a dynasty league and you had, let's just, whatever pick you had, and these guys were available, would you pick Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams as your quarterback one, dynasty quarterback one?
Fantasy football is broken. I'm taking Jaden Daniels. It's the rushing upside. I can't help it. I also will say I am a huge Jaden Daniels guy. I actually am one of the few that had him ranked pre-draft ahead of Caleb Williams, specifically again for fantasy because of how broken it is for fantasy football. The running quarterbacks just are completely rigged. And there's leagues that even tilt it even more. Like I'm in, shout out to Fantasy Football Advice Network. They have a Jersey league I'm in where running quarterbacks get just even more insane points. It's like Caleb Williams on his best day will drop 30 and 40 points, and Jaden Daniels is like averaging 50 a week because of, again, the running. It's the running. So that's the only reason. I think they're both amazing assets to own right now, though, in terms of fantasy football quarterbacks.
Jack, thank you. I had a bunch of trades in my home leagues, but that's going to be a whole different show because we're almost at 2 hours now. I don't know how we do this, but it happens all the time, and I love it. I love talking football. We had no time limit today, so thank you guys for coming on. Thanks for I had to take a pee break. I'm sure Jack did too. I'm JT. I don't know how you keep your bladder like that, but good for you. But or your kidneys, whatever. But Jack, thanks for coming on. Where can everybody find you at?
So it's at Jack Lucenay. You can literally just look it up. It is the worst fantasy shows, what we're focused on during the year. But I also do an interview show. John's been on before. I'll have to have JT on when we're done our little sabbatical because we're just struggling to keep up with scheduling regular shows. But yeah, right now my focus is the fantasy football. I also do some pro wrestling shows on the channel though, so check those out too. It's all just under at Jack Lucenay on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
JT, all the places people can find you at, they already know, but tell them again.
You know, Fantasy and Frames, I'm doing multiple shows a week on there. So just kind of go on to Fantasy Frames, search those. I'm doing 3 or 4 or 5 shows a week on there. If you're into IDP stuff, I got to do the IDP show, but I also have my IDP rankings on DLF. And if you're in a college football guy, I've been jumping on a couple shows, helping out people beyond the betting show I do. But I do have some articles coming up on DLF on my 2025 and 2026 NFL rookie draft mocks that I'm going to have coming out here in the next month or so. So keep an eye out for those as well.
John McGlynn, you can find me on X at John McGlynn 75. You can find me doing my flex zooms every week on the across here on Fantasy and Frames. Most everything I do is on Fantasy and Frames at some point. So jump on. Thanks for watching the Dynasty Evaluation show. If you stay here for 2 hours watching us, more power to you. I hope it was a good ride to Indiana or Wisconsin or wherever you went to listen to the whole show. But it's on almost every week. Sometimes work gets in the way, but this is what we do, talk about football. That's what you love. That's what we love. That's what we're here for. Thanks for joining the Dynasty Evaluation show on Fantasy and Frames. Have a good night.